from what I've heard and what I've seen about projects from the very beginning, it's evident how creative, how energetic, how cooperative, and how in tune you all are. Now, I think most of you, if not all of you, have known Swami. Is that the case? Yes? Is there anybody who did not meet him personally? Okay, there's a few of you. But most of you have met him. And so you have a point of reference. We all do, even those who have not met him, but read his writings and watch his videos. We have a point of reference, just as Swami had a point of reference, where we ask ourselves, what would Swami do? And Swami always asked himself, what would Master do? How would he approach this situation? How would he respond in a certain situation? And this is the level of attunement that we want. And it comes first, of course, as we know, from our own meditation of going deep until we begin to experience what this song was telling us. You know, the I am He, Shivoham, Aham Brahman Asmi. This is my true identity. And once we are solid and comfortable in that, then we attune ourselves to the higher identity and attune ourselves to our masters. Now, they have left us a lot. They have left us a lot of writings. Swamiji has left us a lot of talks and videos and music. This is how we attune with them. There are available at least 10 talks by Master. You know them, right? Have you listened to them? Have you listened to them many times? Do you almost know them by heart? All of the jokes and the stories and so forth. So we listen to them again and again. Master's voice is transforming. Master's voice is enlightening. Master's voice changes our consciousness. So listening to Master's voice, the vibrations of his voice, and then the wisdom of his words. This is how we get in tune with him. Somebody asked me, do I have a collection of stories that I tell? And I said, I used to, lots of them. But where we get our stories from is by listening to Swamiji and to Master. And it's a good thing to write them down. One of the exercises in our Raja Yoga School, meditation teacher training, is listening to about 20 hours of talks by Swami and writing down all the stories. Writing down the examples, the metaphors, the parables, the jokes. This is where and how they used them. In what situation relative to what subject. So that when we come to a situation in our life or we come to a situation in the work that we are doing, we always have a point of reference, of something that Master said, of something that Swami has done, of guidance that he has given you personally or as a group. So Swami's talks are vast. I mean, it would be impossible, even if we listened to them all day, to exhaust that storehouse of wisdom. All of the talks that he gave on television, his talks on the conversations with Yogananda, his talks on Bhagavad Gita, all of the talks that he gave here in Pune, and so forth. Those should be our constant companions. So that every day we're listening to, even if it's only 10 minutes, we're listening to something. We're getting inspired. You have access, I suppose, to treasures along the way from Ananda. Okay, if you don't, please do. Please make sure that that you have that. You can also get, if you don't have USB with all of them. I mean, we're talking about years of talks, years and years of talks. I have almost all of them on my telephone. So wherever you go, and you can put them in by subject, so that if you're thinking about something or wanting to prepare a subject, you can go to one of Swami's talks. Do you need to talk about the chakras? Well, Swami talked about chakras. Do you need to talk about healing? Well, Swami talked about healing. Do you need to talk about attunement? Well, Swami talked about attunement. There's really nothing he didn't talk about in his many years of service. So these resources are really precious to us, and we're very, very, very lucky to have them. I'd like to tell you a little bit about a very little known moment in the history of Ananda, and this happened early on. Swamiji was often looking for ways of giving people opportunities of coming close to the teachings and coming close to our work relative to where they are, so that we can, like with the renunciate order, everybody can start out as a pilgrim. We just need to love God and want to integrate God more in our lives. So this is a first step. And then one can become a brahmachari, a Nayaswami, a tyagi. But starting with the pilgrim. And so early on, the first thing of this type, he called the circles of joy. And there were 3 levels. There were 3 concentric circles of joy. And the one furthest out, meaning the one most accessible to people, had the motto, "Joy is within you." So anybody who wanted, just to be a part of the Ananda family and came to understand that the joy we are seeking in life is inward, and we're making the effort to find joy within us, then they're part of the Ananda family. They're part of the circle of joy, where joy is within you. And I think it was at that time that Swami designed the logo. It was, and with the motto, "Joy is within you." The second circle of joy had the motto, "Service is joy." Okay. And so this is our discussion today. In Ananda Europa at our Assisi Center, we have a program that's the Karma Yoga program, but we don't call it Karma Yoga. We call it Service is Joy program. And it's a very nice program. If you would like to come and spend some time with us, you can come on the Service is Joy program and be with the community and serve and so forth. And they have satsangs and sadhanas and so forth. So service is joy. And we'll talk about that. And the third circle, the innermost circle, has a motto. And that motto is, "Dharma is my guide." Dharma is my guide. So I dedicate myself to living according to Dharma, according to truth, the highest truths, according to justice. So these were the 3 levels. Isn't that fascinating? So joy is within us. So that's our first step. As I was saying, we discover the joy within us. Then service is joy. Because if we don't have joy within and we're just serving, it's not serving. It's just work. It's stress. It's busyness. And there's no joy in that. So first, joy is within us. And then we serve. And through serving, we discover the Dharma. We discover our own Dharma, our individual Dharma. We discover the universal Dharma. So a few words about Dharma, and I'll be speaking more about it on the weekend. But just a few words about our personal Dharma. All of us share a common Dharma. And what is that? Our common destiny. We're going back to God. So that is our Dharma, is to return to God. As Lahiri Mahashaya said, man's only responsibility on earth is to seek God and to find Him. Okay? So that is why we are all here. Now, how we do that depends on our individual karma. It depends on our individual dharma. And there is a difference between our karma and our dharma. Our karma is what we are compelled to do because of our past patterns, our past habit patterns, our past energy patterns. We are compelled to do certain things because we have done them in the past. And some of those things are positive, like meditating and serving, and other things are less positive, which are our bad habits and the resistance. Now, we all come with a story. We all come with a vast and very complicated karma and set of karmic points. And we don't necessarily want to enter into that flow. We don't want to continue to push the energy in the direction of our karma. For example, some people have great talent. Swami would use the example of perhaps in acting or in music or in singing. And so they're born in this life, and because it is a talent and it's something that comes naturally to them, they go in that direction and perhaps gain a great amount of fame. But it's not necessarily what's best for them. Because perhaps in doing so and having money and having fame, they get into other kinds of patterns. And we see that with very famous people. We see it in the music world. I mean, what has happened to Michael Jackson, to Prince, and so forth. We see it in the sports world. And we see it in acting. People burn out. People turn to drugs, to alcohol, and so forth. And their karma has pushed them to become wealthy and famous because that's perhaps what they've desired in the past. But it's not what they need to do right now. I often, not often, but sometimes I think, well, if Mozart, the great composer, was reborn, would he be composing music? I doubt it. Why would he? He would obviously be born with that talent. It would come easy to him, but he's done it, and he's done it really well. So why continue to do it? Okay. Now, we need to ask ourselves, these same questions in our life, because our dharma is also periodic, meaning that there are different periods in our life when we have certain dharmas. And then those dharmas become fulfilled. For example, many of you in this room are parents, and many of you are parents of children that are grown. Okay? Is your dharma as a parent complete? It is. Okay? Once the children are on their own, this is why there are the 4 ashrams, and need to go from grihasta to vanaprastha. Why stay in the mentality of grihasta, of always having to take care of the children? Oh, there's this funny story I read. It was about a man who was, this was in Italy, okay? A man who was suing his mother because his mother kicked him out of the house and took away the car keys. And so it went to court. And the judge found in favor of the mother. And why was that? It was because the man was 50 years old. And she just couldn't get him out of the house. Well, in Italy, it is very common, although less common nowadays, but it was very common for the men in the family. They were spoiled, just like your sons are spoiled. They were spoiled, and they'd go from being spoiled by their mother to being spoiled by their wife. But even when they got married, they would continue to go home. So it was quite common for a married man to have lunch with his mother. He would go home every day, from work, he'd take his break, and the mother would prepare lunch. And he would also bring the wash for her to do. Okay, he was married already. Okay, I mean, just this, and whose fault is that? It's the mother's, because we don't realize that we have dharmas, we do the best we can, we fulfill them, and then we move on because there are other levels and layers of dharma. We have other destiny. Our destiny is to find God. Okay. So even in your work, for example, why do we work? We work to learn, what should we say, to build our character. We serve to perfect certain divine qualities that are within us. And there's so much that we need to learn or remember, okay, that can be done as we work in the world or as we serve. For example, concentration. Concentration, Swami said, is the most important key to success on the spiritual path and in life. Okay? And we learn concentration by doing things, by working, by having projects, by having a focus, by setting goals, by keeping our eye on the goal, the eye on the bird. Okay? And this is a very important lesson. We learn to be, what should I say, organized, to use well our resources. Okay? Because in the cosmic sense, resources are infinite, energy is infinite. But in the physical world, at any given moment, they may not be. Time, for example. So we learn to use our time in an effective way, and that relates to our meditation. When we get in meditation, are we using our meditation time most effectively? Or are we permitting, the thoughts to flow and the images and the planning and the organizing? I have a suggestion for all of us, that when our minds in meditation want to go into how to do things and organize and so forth, that we say to our minds, these are good ideas, let's take them up later. But then do so. And that's important, to spend a few moments after meditation just putting those things down, maybe organizing your day and so forth. And also to have another time during the day when you can be thoughtful. Okay? When you can just be quiet and alone, by yourself, and you can be thoughtful. You can plan things and organize things. You can be creative. The time that I allot to myself is when I go running and walking. And when I go running, I usually do that by myself and just use that time for creative thought. Really, my best thoughts and projects and insights have come during that time. And then I try to remember them all. There was a period of time when so much was coming that I would carry a pencil and paper with me while I was running, and I'd run, and then I'd stop and I'd write things down and put in my pocket and run and so forth. We need to have the times of thoughtfulness. And then we can spend our meditation time without thought, because our mind becomes convinced that we will give it time. And the mind thinks, the mind is creative. We need to respect that. Okay? We need to honor that. And we need to give it time. When we're always, with other people and having so much outside influence, the mind doesn't get satisfied. So we sit to meditate and the mind says, okay, yeah, this is my chance. This is my chance to be creative and so forth. So we need to give the mind other chances. How did we get here? Yes, the qualities, the characteristics that we learn during our life and during our work and service. So let's say that we're in a job. There are certain things that we can learn and develop in that area. But once we have done that, and having done that means having given full energy, full joy, full commitment, and then at a certain point, it's finished. And we move on because there's more that we can learn in other situations. Our society gives a premium to people who stay in the same job for 50 years or 40 years. One of the premiums is called your pension, and then maybe they'll give you a gold watch or a plaque or a certificate or whatever. And that's not the right idea at all. At Ananda Swami, especially when we were young and people coming into the community to do a variety of things. He would put people somewhere for a couple years and then move them to another job and then move them and then move them. Mainly as a benefit for themselves, to learn, to have, because sometimes something that we need to learn we find impossible to learn in a certain situation. We try, and it's like we're just beating our head against a wall, and it's not happening. It doesn't mean that we can't learn that. It just means in that situation, for whatever karmic reasons, we can't do it. And so Swami was sensitive to that also, and he would move people. And in another situation, they would learn that. That was one of his great talents, also in placing people in different situations, is to suggest to people that they serve in a certain area where they can fulfill a certain dharma, where they can learn certain things, and if they're not, to find the situation where they can. It's been our experience throughout the years, throughout the years, that it can be surprising how a devotee in one area of service is doing a terrible job, and in another area of service is doing a brilliant job. Okay? And it's up to the leaders, of the community to be sensitive to that. And I can't say how to do that. It's just by intuition, where you can just feel that person needs to change, or a person needs to do something else, or to work on a particular project, or whatever it is. And remember that our work is here to serve us. We serve the work, but the work is to serve us. Okay? And that needs to be utmost. And that's why Swami's, one of his two main principles, overarching principles, is people are more important than things. And so I've seen it many times where a person perhaps had a certain experience and talent and inclination. That was the word I was looking for yesterday or the other day, inclination, to do something, okay? And it's important for the work, and what should I say? It's critical for the work, but it's not good for them. And he would not let that happen. You know, he would just give something else for that person to do, even to the detriment of the work. I mean, that's what it really means, is people are more important than things, you know. And on the other hand, there were people who were put in situations where they were totally not suited for it. And yet, it was what they needed. And everybody else, many people could be very frustrated, you know, about this situation, that the person is, you know, not suitable, they're creating not good, you know, situation. And yet, that's where they needed to be for that period of time. And sometimes Swami would do it not only for the person, but for everybody else around them. Yeah. And then when the other people, you know, the colleagues would finally, you know, just give in and say, okay, this person, you know, needs this, then the situation could change. I remember one, it was a situation like this, it was a very strong one at Ananda in Assisi, and a person was placed in a high position of responsibility and was not suited temperamentally, you know, and personality-wise. And it was very difficult. I mean, it was several years. It was a very difficult patch for us. I mean, nothing was going well. It was really... And at a certain point in time, I realized, and I don't know how, but I realized that this was that person's last chance, you know, to do something and to get it right. And the person didn't, and then a short time thereafter left the community. So Swami was always sensitive to that. He always gave people another chance, and another chance, and another chance. So we were talking about Dharma, right? Okay. So in the work itself has a Dharma. And there are different phases, you know, in a work. And you've seen many phases here. In the beginning phase was the training phase, and Swami was here for your training. Here he's here for our training. And that was really a great, great, great blessing. And then after the training phase has come other phases and other phases. So I don't know what phase you're in now, but the constant phase for an Ananda work is expansion. And, you know, just pushing the limits, going beyond the limits, because that's what we all need to do as a soul. We need to go beyond our self-imposed limits of what we can and cannot do. Many hands make a miracle. Okay? And so we learn that whereas perhaps an individual person is not able to accomplish something, together, pooling our energy, creating magnetism, creating synergy, so much can happen. And that is one of the purposes of the existence of Ananda, which is to demonstrate that cooperation works. And it is perhaps the one thing that the world needs most right now, is respect, tolerance, and cooperation of doing things together, instead of doing everything, you know, on your own. There's, you might not appreciate this, when President Trump, you know, he's inaugurated, and then there's a ball, a dance, okay? And the president chooses his theme, a song, which is his theme. And President Trump chose the song by Frank Sinatra with the title, Doing It My Way. And that's his philosophy, you know, and to heck with cooperation and so forth. And this is not the winning strategy for the world right now. If every country is doing it their way, the pollution and so forth. There needs to be cooperation. And we see that that particular president just, pulls away from cooperation. Okay? And that's why what we're doing is so important. Jesus at the Last Supper said many wonderful things to his disciples, and I would like to recommend to you that you read that part of the Bible. It's in the Gospel of St. John, and it's chapters 13, 14, and 15. John 13, 14, and 15. Really beautiful things that he says to the disciples, his final instruction to them. And one of the many things that he says is, people will know you are my disciples because you love one another. And that's one of our purposes of Ananda. That's what we can offer the world, that we love one another, that we are brother and sister disciples. Now here you have that. You have that wonderful feeling, and that's something you want to continue. It does not exist in all Ananda places. I mean, you would be surprised at how much conflict, just personality and ego conflict, there can be. And you think, why? This is not Swami's way. But Maya is very strong. So resist conflict. The absence of conflict doesn't mean that everybody agrees. As I said about the other day when I was speaking here about Arjuna and me, we have different opinions on almost everything. Not about the goal of life, not about the path, not about the teachings, but everything else, is open. What? No. We'll tell that at another time. But, and so, a difference, Swami always encouraged a difference of opinion. He always invited people to meetings who he knew had a different point of view, and maybe not the right point of view, but it needs to be, heard and included, which does not mean that we should try to satisfy everybody's opinion. Okay? That is not the case. Right? People have opinions, as Swami used to say, and they're almost always wrong. Even opinions about ourselves are not always right. So opinions don't matter. Dharma is my guide. This is where we move from the service is joy to the Dharma. One of the leaders of Ananda years ago coined the term that Ananda is a dharmocracy. It's based on Dharma, it's based on truth. It's not based on what the majority of people think, because the majority of people, as Swami said, usually are wrong. So compromise doesn't mean giving in, but cooperation does mean giving people the opportunity to explore. When somebody came to Swamiji and they were passionate about a certain idea or project, and Swami, with his experience and wisdom, was able to know whether it would work or not. And there were many of these proposals to him that he knew wouldn't work. But the person was enthusiastic, and they had, good energy. I mean, I was in that situation many times where, oh, I want to do this, and then somebody said, well, fine, go ahead. Because in doing, you figure it out. And rather than blocking that energy. But on the other hand, you don't want to miss the point about what our work is about. There are people, because of their karma and talents and inclinations, might want to, take the work in a certain way. And perhaps they're magnetic and want to move everybody in that way. And perhaps it's not germane to what we're doing. I'm trying to think of an example. We were, Swami was from the beginning, Swami is very practical. Master is very practical. Swami helped us to understand from the beginning that for the community to survive, in addition to inner attunement with God and gurus, we need an economic base. And so he encouraged and himself did many things that brought in an income stream. Now, the first thing that Swami developed was the publications business. And that was totally germane. It was about spreading the teachings. And everything Swami did was about spreading the teachings. His music was about spreading consciousness and uplifting. It wasn't music for music. It wasn't art for art. He didn't want to set up, a music academy and teach people how to sing and play instruments and how to dance and so forth, which he did envision for an Ananda University as being part of it, but not germane. Do you see the difference? It's a subtle difference, and often in our enthusiasm we want to, run in a certain direction. So one of the economic enterprises that we had was in Nevada City, which is the closest town to Ananda Village in California. We set up a health food store. It was called Earth Song. It was a very good store. And eventually it developed a little cafe that became even more a restaurant and so forth. And it was doing its business fine, It was not making a lot of money. It employed some people. But at a certain point of time, people realized that they didn't want to go into town and work in a health food store. I mean, how many people came into our work because, they bought sprouts at Earth Song, or because they had a sandwich or a good bowl of soup? It wasn't happening. It wasn't that doorway into our teachings, not through the stomach, It's through the heart. It's through consciousness. So, but Swami never said anything until the people themselves said, this is not something we want to do. We want to serve in a way that's more pertinent to spreading our teachings. And then the business closed down. So in your initiatives, in your drive to expand and to reach people, realize that is the goal, to reach people by helping them to uplift their consciousness and uplift the consciousness of the world. So the teachings, that is the main part. Okay? And then things that go around it. But don't get distracted. This is why we're here. We're here to spread the teachings. We're here to bring people joy, to help them find joy within themselves. So let's come back to service is joy. How can we serve, more effectively? Now remember that it's we who need to serve. It's not the work that needs our service. Because if any one of us were not here, the service would get done. Isn't that true? So. Okay? Because Master has resources, And when we think that we're indispensable, we're in trouble. None of us are indispensable. Okay. So this is Master's show. Remember what Swami said to us here in India. Remember, this is Babaji's work. Okay? And he knows what he's doing. And they provide, the providence, the infinite abundance. So we want to ask ourselves, how am I growing through my service? And if we have a talent, if we have an ability, and we offer it to God and Guru, He will, what's the word I want to say? Reward. It's not the right word. He will bless us through that if we're doing it with the right attitude. That it's for God and Guru. And then without attachment. Without attachment doesn't mean without energy. It doesn't mean without commitment. These are the things that we learn through our service. And one of them is commitment. I am doing this, I will see it through. Until God and Guru, point me in another direction. And to have that ability to commit ourselves entirely if we're in tune with the Dharma, with our own Dharma. And that's a very important quality on the spiritual path. Really being able to throw ourselves into something and not think about the cost, Maybe I won't be sleeping enough. Maybe I'm not eating well, maybe and so forth. Okay. So don't count the cost in the service. You just serve. You throw yourself into it. And that's what makes the difference in progress, in spiritual progress. There are, the devotees, who give a fraction of what they're able to give. A fraction of their time, a fraction of their talent, a fraction of their money. And they get a fraction of the blessing. And then there are those who give everything. And that's what Guru is looking for. Those who are willing. As it says in Bhagavad Gita, this whole world is based on yajna. It's based on sacrifice. And sacrifice doesn't mean pain. Sacrifice means being willing, to give up things that are less important for something that is more important. Swami would comment when some people would leave Ananda and with the thought, I don't have time here to meditate. I'm going to go and live somewhere else and have more time to meditate. And so they might go and live near a center and not serve very much. And Swami commented, they're not growing. They are not growing as much as people who are here. And perhaps not sleeping enough and getting tired and perhaps coming to the edge of exhaustion and so forth. Now, I would like to talk about spiritual burnout. And because it is something that we want to avoid and we can avoid. So the spiritual life is about balance. Now, I just said that we need to give 100%, and I meant to say 200%. But how do we do that without burning out? We need to maintain a balance in all things. And the balance starts with our sadhana. And you have your satsang here, you have your sadhana, your group is together, and you hold on to that because that's the inner point, that's the hub of the wheel that keeps the wheel going in balance. And when the wheel is in balance, it can carry more and more speed. It's the same thing with our kriya. I'll talk about that this evening, how you get to a point of balance in your kriya, each kriya practice, and then you can put more and more onto that. You need a balance also in a physical sense. Okay? Master says that we need to keep ourselves healthy. He was very strong about that. In his recommendations for a yogic life, his first recommendation was daily exercise. First. Swami's first recommendation in his 26 Keys for Higher Awareness is exercise. When Master gave Swami suggestions, he talked about half an hour every day. So I'd like to emphasize that. We don't want to make exercise our religion. It's not about becoming fanatic. It's about regular exercise, good diet, and all of what Master teaches about healing. But exercise is very important. And having time when your mind and body can relax. Now, Swami, as we know, he served and served and served. I mean, who can write 150 books in one lifetime? It's impossible. Who can compose so much music? And so we would think that he was at it day and night, day and night. In a certain sense, he was. But observing the rhythm of his life, there were always moments when he would disconnect. Like he would have his 3 meals. Masters told him, have 3 meals a day, and he always did that. And during that time, he would disconnect. Just sit there, have his meal, usually have it in silence, by himself, and just have that time. Every day at 5 o'clock, he would have tea. It was tea time. He would stop what he was doing, leave his office, call some friends, want to come over for tea, and we would sit there and talk. He would show us his chapters. We would laugh. He would ask about the work, but it was just a relaxed time. Whenever Swami finished a project, finished an event like Spiritual Renewal Week, I didn't understand this in the beginning. We would have Spiritual Renewal Week, which was a whole week. Swami would give everything in the beginning. He would give everything, and it was so inspiring all the way through. And then it would be Sunday afternoon, it was all over, and he would say, let's go to the movies. And he would take us into Grass Valley, and we would go and see James Bond. We saw all the James Bond movies after Spiritual Renewal Week. So in the beginning, I said, this is crazy. What is he doing? And I think a couple of times I said, no, I'm not going. I'm just going to meditate. But then I said, well, I'll go. And I began to enjoy James Bond. Not the recent ones. You can forget those. The Daniel Craig ones, no, they're of a different type. But James Bond was fun. It was a spoof. It was, do you understand spoof? It was making fun of a genre. And I finally got it. Swami was saying, you have to be light about, what we're doing. We need to have those times. And then finishing something at other times a little later, then we just go on vacation. It was after Spiritual Week, Hawaii. We would just go to Hawaii and spend maybe 10 days, 2 weeks in Hawaii, just relax. Swami had these moments of detaching, taking out the plug and relax. And they were regular. So we want to move that into our life, every day, where we just have these moments where we relax, we do something else, we go for a walk, for a run, go to see a movie. We went to see a nice movie last night, Mary Poppins, and it was a lot of fun, just a different world, a family. We live in a different world. So keeping that balance. Our diet is important, So just eat properly. And as Master said, don't make a religion out of your diet. Don't make a religion out of your exercise. But do what is necessary in order. Master said, body temple fit for self-realization. Yeah. That was his perspective, his outlook on that. So in our service, we realize that it's for us that we're doing it. And not to get, we can fall into service traps. Several of them I mentioned already, to thinking we're indispensable. Okay? In order to help us overcome that thinking we're indispensable, there was, I can't remember who it was, an interviewer was asking a very successful business person who had come up to the top, of his company, the top of his world. And the interviewer said, "What is your secret of success?" And the man answered saying, "Every time I was given a job, the first thing I did was to train my replacement." And that's how he advanced, because he did what he needed to do at the same time training the other person, and then went on to something else, something else, something else. So if you're asking yourself, how can I go on with my Dharma, that's the answer. Is bringing other people, training other people to do what we do. And that's Swami really emphasized that, to us, that we need to train and give over. And that's what, for many years, I'm dedicating, my life to, is training other teachers. I used to sit in Swami's classes. I always sat right in the front row, right in the center, and I would just, absorb it. And I often had the thought, I can never be like that. Never just, have this flow of inspiration and so forth. It was just like impossible, to conceive of that. But it was his intention that we do that, that we become that. The story of the philosopher's stone, where those who touch it become a philosopher. And that's what we want to do. And I hear people say in the teacher training programs, "Oh, I'll never be able to teach like you." And that's not true. Of course we can, because what Swami tuned into, it's still there. And it's there for us to tune into it and to channel it. And we want to get the thought out of our mind, "I can't do that, I can't be like that." We don't want it to be an egoic thought, "Oh yeah, I'm Swami." But to think, yes. I mean, before this class, of course, I prayed to Swami, that he just come to us today, and touch us with his thoughts and his wisdom and with his experience. And yes, we can and we will do that if we don't put blocks up along the way. So let's see where I was. I was talking about spiritual burnout, not how to keep balanced. I went somewhere else. Diet and fitness. That's all about to retrain our replacements. Certainly so. Okay, so in our service, we're serving Master. It's important for us to keep that foremost, because one of the traps, I'm talking about traps, there we go, the traps that are inherent within service. We can fall into the trap of thinking that we are serving other people and their needs and what they want and their expectations. And there is a difference in evolution between the kshatriya, which is a high level of evolution, and the Brahmin. So the kshatriya serves because he's compelled to serve, because that's his desire. And his joy comes in service, which is a beautiful state, rather than the Vaishya who's working and maybe serving for himself and for his family and so forth. So the kshatriya is serving other people, and it's the joy of serving and giving. And it can become a compulsion, an obsession. I have to serve. What do people want? What do people need? Now, the Brahmin has a different perspective. The Brahmin says, I serve God. In whatever way God wants me to serve him. If he doesn't want me to serve in a certain way that I'm talented in doing. I won't. If he does want me to serve in a way that I'm talented, I will do that. But the Brahmin knows he is always serving God, God in those people. And this is why Mother Teresa of Calcutta had Brahmin consciousness. She was not Kshatriya, she was Brahmin consciousness. Who was she serving? She was serving Jesus. And that was it. Every person was an embodiment of Jesus. Jesus said that, whenever you do serve the least among my children, you are serving me. I was in prison and you came to comfort me. I was hungry and you gave me food. And the disciples said, you were never in prison and we make sure you're not hungry. And he said, when you do this to the least of my children, you're doing this to me. So this is the attitude of service. We're serving Master. We often say we're serving his work. This can be an excuse. This can be an excuse for insensitivity to other people. We're serving the work. The work, this is what's important. We're serving God. We're serving God in other people. And the work is serving them and serving God. And if the work is ever not serving Master, then it needs to dissolve. I was present at a talk that Swami gave in a big conference. And Swami's part in the conference was talking about community, spiritual community. This was in Canada, and it was in the early 1970s. And Swami was invited and introduced as the father of the communities movement, the modern communities movement. So that's what his talk was. And I was sitting in the audience, and Swami got up, and, he had been introduced. And the very first thing Swami said was, actually, I'm not interested in communities. And like everybody, myself included, what's happened to him, And he said, I'm interested in serving people and in their higher selves. And communities can provide a great service to people by providing a spiritual environment where people can find God. And then he said, if the Ananda communities or any communities no longer provide this kind of environment for God realization, then they should be dissolved. He said, I would, if I'm not here, I would want to, come back from where I am and destroy them. Okay. So these are some things to keep in mind. Okay. Some perspective. Now, what about the joy part of service? We often wondered, how could Swami do so much? And we would ask him, because when you're used to giving 200%, what can happen. You get sucked into the vortex of, and you just get sucked up. And there you are, just spinning around in that work. And how can you avoid that? Swami said when we asked him, he said, I work very hard, but never to the point where I lose my inner peace. That was his point of reference. He says, if I feel I'm losing my inner peace, I stop and get that peace back. And then I continue. This is a wonderful guideline, isn't it? It's not so easy, especially for energetic and dynamic people. It's easy to lose our inner balance and our inner peace because we just get super involved. And especially when projects have deadlines and so forth. The music concert is happening on this day, the walkathon is on this day, and there are 1,000 things that need to be done and need to be in order before that day comes. And so we get lost in that. And in a way, we want to lose, our ego. We want to lose our resistance. We want to lose our thought of limitation, because we can be doing so much more than we are doing if we're feeling the joy in it. Because being a channel for Master, being an instrument of Master, is joyful. Because you feel his joy, you feel his love, you feel his energy. And that's where we want to keep it. So what do we do when we lose our inner peace and we're in the midst of service? We take the time, even if it's 1 minute, to get it back. And just do it often. It's even better to do the 1 minute before we lose our inner peace. Coming back. I've developed some exercises that's called rapid recharging exercises. And they just take 1 minute, or 2 minutes. And it's just putting together, a few things. It could be anything. You could lose your peace and say, okay, I'm going to do the touch of light for 30 seconds. And you put your index finger on your spiritual eye and just focus, feel centered, and then you go on. Or perhaps you do the 20-part body recharging. You just stand up from your desk or go outside, tense and relax. You do the 20-part body recharging. You do some brain awakening exercises, and then you come back. Okay? So just create your own 1 minute, 2 minute, and 3 minute recharging and recentering exercises, and just do it every hour. Whether you need it or not, because we always need it. We always need to just come back. Part of our service's Joy program, I think they're still doing it when they do projects together, is every half hour they ring a bell. And when you hear the bell, you stop. We used to do that also at the village. When we were working the garden or wherever, there was a big gas tank. And somebody every hour would just bang it once. And wherever you were, you would just stop. And breathe, just for a few seconds. Center, and then go on. Okay? Because otherwise, how can we serve if we're not centered? How can we carry that, the force, the power that God wants to channel through us if we're not centered, if we're off balance? So it's not unusual for devotees to get to a point of burnout or of, nervous exhaustion or so forth. I've been through it many times, in the early years until I figured some things out. And at a certain point, you say, okay, you just don't need to do that anymore. You understand how to keep yourself. And there are times you forget. We've heard stories of Master doing things and keeping his disciples with him, sometimes for 3 days and nights. And they didn't sleep. And they didn't have time to do their kriyas. But he was there, feeding them with his energy, and they never felt tired. Okay. So we have all of the tools that we need. When in our service we feel tired, we energize. When in our service we feel out of inner peace, we come back and we do the touch of light. We practice Hong Saw for 1 minute and just get back to the breath, to the spine. So service is joy, and it should be joy. And that really is the guideline for our whole work. That's what Ananda is about. It's about feeling the joy, following our joy, being in joy, that the joy is within us, and that when we serve, we are in joy. So, we have time now for questions or comments or stories. I'm sure you have questions. Don't wait until the last day. That's what they do in Russia. You know, you can be there. I'm going to be there for 2 weeks. I know that a half an hour before I leave, they'll ask me all the questions they wanted to ask me.
I have a question.
Yes.
Is it through meditation or service or reading and listening to Swamiji and Master's work that we get better attuned, or is there one which is more effective than the other?
In Italian, they have a saying, tutto fa brodo, which means when you're making a soup, everything adds to the flavor of it. That's how minestrones are made. And everything that we can do will help. And I would say all of it. Certainly meditation. You know, that's... so your meditation, that's your base. That's your foundation. But the other things are needed as well. I mean, it's important to hear Master's voice and hear Swami, if possible, every day, even if it's just for a couple minutes. And that's why you need to keep him near your telephone. You know, so, you know, if you're riding in a car or whatever, just to use kind of like the downtime, these moments where we can be in the vibration. And that's what it means, is to be in the vibration. Sometimes, I mean, I remember that I have had some of my best spiritual experiences listening to Swami, being in his presence and listening to Swami. You know, it's just like, you know, lights go off and things open up and things happen. So in meditation, we become receptive. And then in listening and in reading and in watching, we're able to absorb. You're welcome.
What is the best way to generate enthusiasm for something you really don't feel enthusiastic about?
Okay, this is a good question. First of all, we need to ask ourselves, if we're not enthusiastic about something, is it something that we need to be doing, you know, for our dharma? Sometimes it's clear, like you want to be enthusiastic about raising a child. So, you know, the dharma there is very clear. Other times you feel, I mean, for example, when Swami would ask people, suggest to people that they do something, he always gave them the opportunity to think about it, meditate, and see if it was something that they would want to do. I remember that Swami, offered me an opportunity once in the 1980s to become director of the publications building. And my enthusiasm level for that was 0. I mean, I really did not want to do that. But I also had complete trust that if he was asking, if he was suggesting something, it was for my own benefit. And so I can't say I ever became enthusiastic about it, but I did give everything to it. And so giving your energy, just putting it in entirely, you know, and then it flows. Making the movie Finding Happiness, I can't say that I was enthusiastic about that. You know, it was a long and difficult project for which I was not qualified. And, but there it was, and I was enthusiastic, what should I say, about the end result, about the goal. That there be something that speak about Swami and about Ananda So on that level, I was extremely enthusiastic, but not about doing what needed to be done in order to get there. But in another way, it kind of doesn't matter, in a sense. Because if you're given something and you know that it's good. I mean, I knew that was mine, that I needed to do it. And I knew that it would mean a lot for me, for my spiritual progress. And at the same time, I really was not enthusiastic about it. And then you do it. You get into it. And what happens is you begin to see Master's presence and his hand. Because if you're giving everything, then Master's responding, and you get into a dance, and then you get into that flow. Yes?
I think, sorry, I'm still formulating the question, but let me try.
Certainly.
You were speaking, while you're speaking about traps in this whole issue of service,
Mm-hmm.
and you were speaking also about that you should not do, that somebody will not do something up to the point in which it
Lost his inner peace.
He lost his inner peace, and that we shouldn't either. Now, this has two parts. This is the first part, and the second part I'll also say, because I think they may be interconnected. Now, I can see that as an easy way to have an excuse when you're feeling a little lazy, or when you're feeling this kind of, unwillingness, that, well, it's not giving me joy, let me go do something else. The second part of this, and question being, obviously, how do you tell? How do you tell the difference? How do you discriminate? The second part of this is, you were also mentioning before, I cannot quote exactly, I'll paraphrase, please correct me if I got it wrong, that, that the Dharma goes in stages, that you may do something for 2-3 years, at some point it may no longer be useful for you, and you leave. Now, I can see a very much bad trap in that if, at some point somebody is not enjoying what they do anymore, they can say, well, I think it's not my Dharma anymore, I'm going to do something else. Again, it may be right, but it may just be the ego speaking up. How do you tell? So basically, how do you discriminate in these situations?
Yeah. Well, one thing that Swami taught us, that in meditation, when we have these, should I do this or that, to visualize it in meditation, to visualize yourself, continuing in a particular service and see how that feels, and then doing something else and see how that feels. To go in meditation to our feeling and ask Master to inspire us at that time. Remember also, there's so many factors here, and it takes really a lifetime to balance them. It's all about balance. And in order to balance, sometimes you need to go to extremes to understand that, no, the extreme is not where I want to be, and I need to get back. Like you need to be out of tune to understand what it means to be in tune. You need to be extreme, in one way, like eat chocolate every day to realize that you don't like how you feel and you want to go back to a better diet. But I was going to add, there was another factor I was going to add to confuse you even more. Yes. So Master was a kshatriya, by birth, but also by his service, and we know he'd been a kshatriya in many different lifetimes. So this spiritual kshatriya, what is that about? It's about sometimes, doing what we don't want to do, maybe we don't feel joy in doing, but it's being asked. Jyotish, you would call it a mission critical job, which doesn't last forever, by the way. It passes. But there are times when, as soldiers, we're on the battlefield and we're being asked to do something. And in doing it, there will be blessings. We have to understand that. We have to have faith in that. And then just to do it the best that we can. Now, there are signs when it really isn't right. And one sign is our health. Another sign is our relationships. If we're getting so out of balance. Laziness. I can't imagine that any of us are lazy, although I even feel that I'm lazy, in many, situations. And I always try to keep, active and keep positive. And Swami would say, by the way, in response to your question and also, act enthusiastic and you will be enthusiastic. You just get it started. It's like Master's saying, meditate with joy. If you want to have joy in your meditation, then sit down with an attitude, he said, of joyful anticipation. I'm going to touch God today. I can go into samadhi today. I have this, even if it's, I only have a half an hour to meditate, this joyful anticipation. So it's what we bring to the table. Now, there are going to be times when, what can I say? In growing, in our spiritual growth, there are points, how can I put this? There are points at which we're blocked, and our dharma is to go beyond them. We need to break through. So they're ego resistance points, let's put it that way. Like if you're running at long distance, and Sanjay will know about this. You're running long distance and you're going to get to a point where you hit the wall. And when hitting the wall is both a physical and a psychological moment. On the physical level, it's like you don't have any more energy. You cannot lift up your leg one more time. Remember Swami when he was building his house in the roof, and he was doing that, and he couldn't do it one more time, and then he forced himself, and he did it. So you get to this point, you get to the wall, and psychologically you say, I can't go beyond it. Okay? But we need to go beyond it. I mean, there are moments when you just know that life is saying, okay, get beyond it. And when you do, like when you're running, it's a completely mental thing. You just do whatever, like I said, I am energy. I'm made of energy. Awake, rejoice, my body cells. And it changes. All of a sudden, you're flooded with energy, and you make that last part. You finish and you say, oh, I could do more. And I mean, that's really joyful, You finish a long run, you've gone through the wall, you've gotten over it, you're filled with joy, and you finish and you say, I could keep going. So there are times, and life presents us with those situations. Every one of us has had, and we will have these situations on our spiritual path, and that's what growth is about. It's just going beyond. Going beyond our limitations. What happens is we connect with a higher power. That is joy. When what you're doing, you feel you're not doing it anymore. It is being done through you. And it becomes easy. It becomes easy. And that's beautiful. I reached a point in teaching where I was a good teacher. I knew I was a good teacher. But that there was something else. There was going to be another, level. It had to be more consciousness, and so forth. And I just said, okay. I could easily quit and say, okay, I've done it. I'm a good teacher. It's enough right now. Let me do something else. But I knew that there was a different level. And then you get there and it's like, you just, there you are. And suddenly, it comes. It's the sahaja state. hopefully we'll all get to this sahaja state in our meditation, where I'm not there yet, where, you're just battling and concentrating and doing your kriyas and everything. And then at some point, the joy comes in. And it's like Master's doing it through you. And he can do so much through you. So where we are at block points, resistance point, could be far away from where we could be. Far away. We could be experiencing amazing things in particular areas where it's just flowing and flowing. That's, people who are rich, really, really rich, they've reached that point where, and there's almost nothing they can do to not make money. It's just flowing. It's just like everything, every little thought, every little thing, it just, and that's where we want to get. And each one of us, in whatever we're doing, we're going to hit the wall. I mean, you can count on it. I hit the wall many times in finding happiness. Where you're just discouraged and it's not working and I'll never do this and I'm not the right person and I have no joy in this, And then you say, okay, but it's there, it's there to be done, and you go through. So again, it's balancing, okay? Meditation, good diet, exercise really helps. Really, really, really helps.